Cesare Garlati, our Purple Foundation Chief Security Strategist, is going to introduce, we had one of these questions about what Purple is, to give you kind of just a quick overview of what we do and what our goals are and our member organizations. So, Cesare Garlati.
Hi there. So I like interactive kind of presentations. So if you want to stop me anytime, ask me, just express your opinion. I definitely welcome that, more than actually going through the old slides. And so I would ask people perhaps to sit down or to continue your conversation outside, whatever works better for you. Very good. And so I know many people actually have questions about Purple and involvement with OpenWrt, so I think I'm the right person today to eventually address these questions. So let's start with the basic. So Purple is spelled in that way, prpl, but we pronounce it purple, like the color. And my Italian accent doesn't serve well, but it's like the color in English, okay? You can see what's our mission statement, but it's an open source organization, so it's a non-profit, supporting open source development, in particular related to connected devices. Someone asked about platforms. We are platform agnostic. We don't support any specific platform in particular. We do have a core group of members who actually have developed expertise around the MIPS platform. And that's naturally where we start from. We just started. We are a one-year-old organization. So to achieve critical mass, to become relevant, we had to start from something and focus on something. But there's nothing in our bylaws, there's nothing among our members that actually points to one platform rather than another one. In fact, if you just quickly go through the names that you see on that board, where you'll see almost all the SoC manufacturers out there, you will see that all of them work on different platforms. So there's definitely nothing specific. And there's one in particular, Imagination Technology here, which is one of the Platinum members who actually owns the IP for MIPS. But Imagination Technology themselves do a lot of work and a lot of business with ARM. If you don't know, they are the GPU in your cell phones and tablets that you probably have in your pockets right now. Very good. So let's see. OK, so this, with a bad ratio there, gives you an idea. Oops. OK. So Purple, as you saw before, has a kind of 20, 22, 23, still growing number of members as of now. These are corporate members, OK? The board of directors is comprised of the top tier, because we have tiers within the organization. And so you see the names there. I'm not going to read them for you. But Qualcomm, Broadcom, and Imagination, and so forth, deeply involved into this project. So the way I try actually to visualize the ecosystem, you can look at a group of SoC manufacturers. And this group, by the way, is growing, right? Depending how familiar you are with the semiconductor industry, that might mean something to you or not. But let me tell you, these are the tier one. These are the big guys, OK? And then there is a group of specialists that provide IP, meaning information proprietary components for the SoCs. And then you have the specialists mostly on security these days, OK? Intellectual property, sorry, IP. Very good. So what are the things we are doing? We help projects. We don't necessarily drive projects. And so these are the three projects that we are helping, supporting today. One is QEMU, which is an emulator. It's, in fact, the most used emulator out there. OpenWrt, prpwrt in this slide, because this is a Purple slide, but it's what we are discussing today. And just recently founded group which is around security and virtualization. And so I'm presenting today on behalf of the president of Purple. His name is Art Swift. He couldn't make it. It's quite close to where we are today, but he has a conflicting appointment there. But I'm actually driving the security project, so I'm more knowledgeable of the security side. And eventually, if you stay, we'll go to representation of what we are doing on the security side. So let me give you an idea of what we are doing with regard to these three groups. Very quickly, you can read the slides. I'm not going to read them for you. Okay? So this is the QEMU objective. As I said, it's a portable emulator. Just to give you a sense, if you want to develop something for a Raspberry Pi, which runs on ARM, and you have an Intel laptop, that's what you used to do, okay? And many other things, obviously. Very good. So this is what prpl is doing in terms of helping the OpenWrt as we speak. Just to give you an example, we are organizing and partially founding this very event. We provide social media support. I have a few slides to come. We're trying to enable the community in any way we can. I'm not going to tell you what is OpenWrt because you are the experts, so let's just skip these slides. Okay, a little bit about the security working group, which I said is the last one and is the one that finds most of the interest these days, right? So what we are doing, and I'll go into the details later in the afternoon in a separate session. So we're trying to define a framework that spans across hardware and software at a very low level, as close as possible to the semiconductor level. In fact, we would like to see it actually embedded into the SoC itself, which is about a few things around security. Is a way to define APIs, but also building blocks and the way these blocks should interact. And as I say, platform agnostic, nothing specific to any specific platform. In terms of deliverables, what we will see coming out is, to start with, it's a guidance document. It's a piece of paper. This should be ready in a couple of months. Will be open to peer review. So if you're interested personally or with your company, just let us know. We will include in the list, and you will get a chance eventually to add or edit. But in the next phases, what we would like to see is a reference platform. So it's some piece of hardware, some low-cost board that can actually show how you deliver these new security features. And I'm going to show you what these security features are in a minute. Very good. So a couple of words around why there was a need to put together this security group. Again, I'm not going to read all of these boxes. But on one side, there's definitely an overall need across the industry for security. And so if you want to call this information security, that's one way to define it. Security means many different things. So I would like probably just to give an idea just what means security. For some companies, whose business is to sell copyright-protected content. You might think to Netflix, which is the name that comes up to mind, but there's a whole industry out there, right? Their very business is to make sure whatever content they have doesn't end up on YouTube or on the internet. There may be a company that deals with rights for sport events, maybe very different situations, right? Now, you understand that security to them, their very existence is based on the fact that that content stays where it is. That's the security for them. For other companies, hardware manufacturers, routers, so I'm not talking about home gateways, bigger things. Just to make sure that people cannot reflash a device and use a higher level of service out of the box that in the end is the same, it's security for them, right? For us, as individuals, privacy is probably what the closest proxy to security, right? My information, my phone book, or whatever is the situation. And so for a regulatory compliance body, such as the FCC, security means radio waves, right? Think about what's happening with Volkswagen. Well, for the EPA, security is making sure you don't tweak with exhaust emissions and so forth, right? So this is a whole bunch of ways to look at security. And so let me give you an idea of what the problem is at a much bigger scale. And so who guessed what is $77 billion? Okay, so it's easy. So what it is? Let's see if you're still awake. Okay, I'm going to help you a little bit. According to Gartner, this is the worldwide spending for information security products and services this year. So it's a big number. It's a big problem out there. Okay, this is on a global basis. What is $400 million? So the financial loss, this was actually last year, resulting from this kind of investment. So
we spent 77.
There you go. You see? Your brain is kicking in, right? So we spent $77 million to get $400 million. So that's just one instance. That's exactly the point of this slide. That's just one instance, okay? If you follow my tweet account, every day if I wanted, I could tweet of a new data breach with millions of records. I'm based in the US despite my accent. So just last week we have two major. One is T-Mobile, 5 million records gone. Companies get fines, okay. That's part of their business. They don't want to get fined, but they get fines. But the damage to the brand, users, because in the US, if you are from the US, you know very well, to open a line of credit, bank account, get into some financial troubles, what is needed is your name, your address, your phone number, and your social security. If I know these 4 pieces of information, I can get money in your name. That's not something that you really want to happen, right? That's the way the system is designed. US credit cards mostly still don't have the chip. So if I know the credit number, that's why it's so important, right? Don't want to take too much time with this. What I think is interesting to observe is that 99.9%, this is, by the way, if you read down there, it's the Verizon report, which is one of the most trustworthy across the industry. It's independent. So the vast majority of all of these incidents was actually caused by security problems that were known well in advance. In fact, 1 year old, which brings to a very relevant point to OpenWrt and the whole conversation around flashing or not. Systems needs to be patched, and in fact needs to be patched very, very quickly. You probably read of Google that finally came to an agreement to publish 1 new release of their version of Android per month, monthly release, and this is something really a progress in their views, right? 70 to 90% of the malware that have been analyzed is unique to an organization. So in my last corporate role, I was the VP of mobile security for Trend Micro, which is the 3rd largest security vendor in the world. So I know this area quite well. But the whole idea is that there's something of that is called targeted attacks. The idea that you have an antivirus that looks at signature and figures out if something is good or bad, that's something of the past. It's very easy. There are many tools. Most of them are actually open source and free, where you can just pick some vulnerability, regenerate the code, change whatever you want. At that point, the signature is different. If you know Metasploit, you know what I'm talking about, right? So this is trivial these days, right? 23% of the people who I sent an email will click the attachment. That's what number is saying there, regardless of what, yes. And so if I spam a list, such as the OpenWrt list, and I say, your confirmation for the flight to New York, whatever, that's something that happened recently, I wonder how many people actually click that link. That's called phishing, but that's the way actually I get the malware into your endpoint. And from that endpoint, I can take control of your endpoint. This comes that there are trusted networks. To me, doesn't apply anymore. Someone mentioned before, speaking about firewalls, right? If it's coming from the local network, what does it mean, a local network? How do you know that an Android device, an Apple device on your network is more or less secure that something is coming from outside? It doesn't make any sense these days. That's what these numbers are telling us. And by the way, the easiest way to actually get into any corporate resource to cause real damage is not really to go and look for vulnerability in the SSH server. No, it's just to get user ID, password, and credentials. This is 90% of the cases. Which means that the endpoint, because that's the interaction of the user, it's really the critical, it's one of the most important parts of this problem. Which also means, if you think carefully about that, we tend to look at the problem as the endpoint, as the mobile device, as the tablet, as the phone, whatever, right? let's not forget that that device is mobile, meaning that connects to something else on the other side. And we tend to forget the other side. The other side is what OpenWrt is up to. That's the kind of realm. Let's not forget that for any mobile device, there is a base station somewhere in some sort, with some form of radio connectivity that does the other half of the work. So it is as vulnerable as well, right? And we know that SSL is not bulletproof. So I want to move a little bit faster here. I have a few more slides, but this is very relevant to something that I will be going to the details in my next presentation in the afternoon. But the way an attack is performed against any kind of information system typically involves different steps. It starts from a recognition, from an understanding of what you're up to. Usually you look for the low-hanging fruit, the most vulnerable path to get into something. And from there you do what is called lateral move, or pivoting into systems. You move around, figure out what ports you can reach, what systems, what services are running there, what are exploitable. If you need to write an exploit, most probably not, because these are available. Again, look at Metasploit just to get a sense of what these things are. You can do the, what's called, the Hail Mary or something like that. Basically, you can throw any possible attack that you have in your database against a target, against a node. And you have hundreds of them in a network, you're very likely to get one of these to succeed, right? And then you go after what you're really interested in, which is typically IP or sensitive data. Why I took the time to put this slide here, this picture in this slide, is because the home gateway is definitely part of this chain. Absolutely. If you look at one of the most famous attacks in the US just this year, the Target attacks, well, the way they got into the Target POS payment system was actually going through a contractor. So they went after the personal computer of the contractor to actually get user ID password to get into the other network. Now, when you have this kind of small business individuals, their endpoints are connected to some home gateways, to some routers. So that's definitely part of the chain. This is just a financial damage. And so I have a few minutes, just an idea what means an open framework for security at prpl, at least in our views. It means these things, okay? And I'll go into the details later on, but anything that goes from secure boot, root of trust, crypto engines in general, securing data streams, and eventually having secure containers within one operating system or across operating systems, which is really the cutting edge kind of where the industry is moving, virtualization that goes down to the hardware level. But not just for the software stack, but also for hardware. If you look at the hardware these days, it's comprised by many processors. There are so many pieces there. There's not just one CPU and one memory or whatever. You have network processors, many of them. You have GPUs, you name it, right? And so the idea is to be able to map each one of these virtual guests into some hardware resources so that, for instance, a user that flashes OpenWrt on a router will not be able to change anything about the radio component because that's part of a different guest. Same hardware, same fabric, same bus, same whatever, but completely separated from a logical perspective. That's just an example of the things can be done. Or in the case of a car, for instance, not being able to deal with the emission side of the engine when you want to just replace the software for our head unit, the music sound system. That's another example.
That was manufacturing, so that wouldn't help in that case.
Not today, not today, but we are looking forward. So if this kind of architecture starts becoming pervasive, then you will get to these solutions. And by the way, if you have a player at home, any kind of streaming device, an Xbox, whatever, same story there as well, right? The moment you get copyrighted content, how do you make sure it doesn't go somewhere else? If you think about that from a regulatory perspective, it's the very same thing. Okay. So this is the concept of multi-domain security. Okay, so this is the guidance that we are working on. Will be out in a matter of few weeks. Please help us. We are non-profit and we are open source. If you feel like you can contribute to this work, let us know how you do that. Few different ways. And by the way, these are the ways we actually help the community. prpl is a community portal. This is not owned by any of our corporate members. This is owned by prpl. This is owned by us, by you. It's a space on the web where you can post your stuff. There's very little control. In fact, you can request to Eric actually access as an editor, so you can actually submit posts directly. I took this screenshot just a couple of days ago. It says 2 days to go to our OpenWrt event, which is today. Right? So, we also offer a way to post some multimedia, interviews, videos, give visibility to your work, who you are, what you do. That's the community portal. You don't see it here, but there's also a Twitter feed that comes up on a column. If you do anything relevant, it gets picked up, and eventually, again, you speak with Eric to get more visibility there. So please help us develop this portal as well. Obviously, on Twitter, we are very active, and so that's just an example of the tweets we do. But something I wanted to share with you might not be so evident, but Eric mentioned 30-something thousand views and great blog posts. On the other side, we did a little bit also of advertising for that blog post. So this is an example. 15,000 views just for this tweet. So this is one of the ways we help the community in what you do, right? So there's more than software behind it. And the final thing, which is very dear to me, so this is our YouTube channel. And you see a lot of purple t-shirts there. So I would love eventually to get 2-3 minutes of your time if you are involved with the OpenWrt workings and would like to just add your quick interview there. So that's Hall of Fame. If you want to be part of it, what you need to do is to pick one of these t-shirts down there, which, by the way, have the OpenWrt logo on the back. And just let me know that you would like to speak with me a couple of minutes in front of the camera. And with this, I think I'm right on target. Yes. So if you have any questions, this is the right time to ask. Do we still have the mic going on, Eric? Because we do have a... So while we wait for the mic, someone before in the conversation with me said something about other companies that try to control or take advantage of the OpenWrt brand, or that's not definitely purple. Let me be very clear. So we don't sell anything, we don't build anything, we don't make anything, and so we are here to help. In fact, I think we never actually tried to drive any decision in terms of roadmaps or anything like that. It's exact opposite. So anything we can do to help, let us know. We are here to help. Please, the question.
Yeah, this is maybe more of a comment. My name is Sten Larsen. I have more than 20 years experience in information security. And as all technology, security, there are good sides and bad sides. The good sides are when it stops the bad guys from stealing our money and information. Some of this hardware security you mentioned here, I think, is sort of part of the bad kind of security, which will be used by manufacturers, regulators to stop us in the open source movement from doing with the devices we paid for, do what we want with them. Digital rights management, etc., etc. So I don't really like that type of security. That's just my
And I respect your opinion, yeah. and thank you for your comment.
Yeah, maybe one question. You showed at the beginning lots of members in purple.
Sorry, just wait 1 second, otherwise they cannot hear you. The mic is coming. There you go.
Thank you. So you showed the slide with lots of members,
yes,
part of the Purple organization. My initial perception of the Purple WRT PEG has been that there's been quite a limited amount of industry members participating. There are a few exceptions who are also present today. What's your opinion about that, and are you trying to increase that, and how are you trying to do that?
What kind of members you have in mind that you would like to see in that slide?
Well, to start with, a lot of the guys you showed on the slide are very relevant, I think, to the OpenWrt initiative as a SOC vendor, for example, but I don't see many of them participating. And then there are a lot of things missing, and I'll be honest, as a vendor or as a manufacturer of gateways, I'm also not a member, so I'll be very honest in that. That's my problem. But you know, for us to join, there also needs to be sufficient critical mass, so it's kind of a chicken and egg problem. So, you know, how can we increase that? How can we also get, for example, more from the user side, from the demand side, customers on board, telcos, users, you know? So that's
absolutely.
Open question, but
yeah. So in fact,
yeah.
there are two questions there and some statements. So I probably pick just the one question, which is how can organization eventually work with Purple? Well, just contact us through our website. Personally, you have my email address there if you want to do that. Let us know. It's a non-profit. We have different tiers. In some situations, we actually welcome individual members, so there's no fee at all. There are many ways to collaborate. And in fact, I think, personally, I think it's more important to have actively engaged individuals than just brands that provide some sort of support, which is important, but it's equally important as active collaboration. You want to say something, Kathy?
Is this one live? Yeah. I just have a curiosity question. You know, just coming off of the Embedded Linux Foundation, or Foundation's Embedded Linux conference, how many of you guys here think there should be something like an OpenWrt Foundation? Does anyone relate to that? Like, does anyone feel like there's a need for more governance and interaction and technical direction? I mean, I'll say I do, but does anyone? Or, okay, and on the flip side, how many think that you just like it to be no governance, just a loose collection of email IRC developers? Okay, thanks.
Anyone else?
And so let me ask you, my question to you, Kathy. So when you say the OpenWrt Foundation, you mean something along the lines of Purple or something that eventually brings in something different? Because that's something different that I would like to understand.
Yeah, I mean the OpenWrt would have its own governance, right. Legal, technical. Like, it's. I agree with the point. You want a foundation that. I think OpenWrt is big enough to me, and I see so many companies using it like my own, that it needs its own sort of focus and foundation. And even though we got it seeded through the Purple Foundation because we were able to funnel some money that was already going into Purple for whatever reasons from these companies, and we had a little working group getting it started. I personally think it's bigger than that.
Very good.
Any other questions?
So again, just a reminder, if you want to have t-shirts here, there's plenty. We actually have a special model for women, as Eric requested. So the first one, no. As a sign of respect for diversity. So that's the first bench, so make sure you don't get the wrong one. So just read the label. And you'll see me again later for the security presentation. Thank you.